Welcome to a Division Series preview edition of the Yanks Go Yard podcast. I'm Adam Weiner alongside Thomas Carinante, and today is the day, Game 1, October 11th, Tuesday, in the Bronx, 7:37 p.m., Cleveland Guardians, and everybody's fully healthy. Wait, I'm being told there was a surprise bullpen Tommy John surgery before the series started. Remember when they were waiting to announce the roster, and it was like, is Oswald Peraza going to make it? Is DJ LeMahieu going to be healthy enough? No. And no. But there was also another question that we didn't even know we had to answer. Now, Scott F. Ross is not in the bullpen. We'll talk about the way these injuries have broken down. We'll compare the rosters. We'll give you all the nitty-gritty before Gerrit Cole's Game 1 start on Tuesday night. We made the case for Nestor Cortez. We also understand why Gerrit Cole, the ace of the New York Yankees, is going to be doing this instead. Not that shocking when it really gets down to it. And, guess who else is not going to be on the roster? Aroldis Chapman, for the first time since 2015, the first Yankees postseason roster he has not been a part of. Absolutely the worst Yankee for many years running, and his playoff karma helped derail countless postseason runs. And weirdly, him getting in a fight with the front office and management and refusing to report before this playoff run started is the best thing he's ever done just before a playoff run. We have no issues. We'll go into that further. Join us, won't you, for a big-time pre-Guardian series roundup. Make sure to find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Drop us those 5-star reviews. Drop us those mailbag questions. Happy to answer. I'm happy to talk to you. Thomas Carinante, welcome into the podcast. Best of 5, not a best of 3. Wild card series, don't have to do that. And Game 1 tonight is massive. But we're in the real playoffs now. Final 4 in the American League. Probably half the teams you expected to be here. The Houston Astros are really the only Yankees enemy left. The Guardians are here. The Mariners are here. The Rays, gone. The Jays, gone. The Mets, who we don't care about, but now suddenly kind of care about, also gone. Very funny. So the pressure is mounting on the Yankees, as it always is, but there are not that many rivals in their way here anymore, which is pretty weird.
It is weird, and I think that, like we talked about last week, I think this matchup, regardless of who came out of this side, boded well for them. League average offenses, yes, good pitching staffs, but Yankees have the second best offense in the league, only behind the Dodgers, who have arguably one of the best offenses of all time, you'd probably say. I mean, fair to say maybe top 10 of all time. If you go back and you look at the circumstances, especially now, we know that pitching has never been as advantageous as it was in the modern day. It's harder than ever to hit, and you have the Dodgers doing what they're doing, first NL team in a century to win 111 games. So you look at it through that lens, and you're like, okay, Indian shit, canceled. I'm out. Sorry, guys. Guardians, league average offense. They scored 3 runs. Right, they won that second game 1-0. It was a walk-off solo shot.
Yeah, 2-1 and 1-0. They hit 2 home runs in the series. They let Jose Ramirez dinger off them. You don't obviously don't want to do that, but Guardians Rays. Nobody hit at all. So a lot of it's good pitching. Nobody's like, oh, the Guardians Rays pitching staff stink. Obviously they're good, but it's not like the offense really stepped up.
No, I mean 3 runs in 2 games. I think that says all. And you're home. They got the job done. They won 2 games. That's huge. That's great. They deserve credit for that, but not really convincing fashion. I think that they kind of played to their abilities there. I think they have a lot of overachievers on this team, and I'm not speaking down to that. I think Steven Kwan is very good. Crazy rookie season. I don't know if that's going to sustain in the playoffs. Andres Jimenez, I think very good baseball player. All-star, I'm not entirely sure. Ahmed Rosario, we saw him play with the Mets a lot.
Yeah.
Solid. I don't know if this is how good he is. So you look at all those factors, and guess who we have coming back to the Bronx, dude? Our boy Miles Straw, ready to fight the crowd.
Oh, interesting.
Why is that storyline? That has been overlooked a little bit because I thought I'd be seeing a lot more memes. And I guess this is where I got to get into the meme game because I'm not really a meme guy. But this is where you got to get. Someone should have been firing off the Miles Straw memes the second the Guardians won that series on Saturday. What are we waiting for, guys?
Miles Straw said he got death threats after that incident.
After he threatened to kick somebody's ass? Yeah.
After he climbed into the crowd. Yeah, I bet he actually did. Yeah, not a fan. One of the worst hitters in baseball this year, 65 OPS plus. He's still in the Guardians lineup. But again, October's weird. Everyone on Earth knows October's weird. I wouldn't doubt that Straw and Kyle Higashioka get the biggest hits of this series, right?
I wouldn't be surprised.
All we know is that the Yankees made some roster decisions, most of which they had to make, and their roster is better than the Guardians. Their roster is better than the Rays. That does not mean they're going to beat the Guardians. That does not mean they would have beaten the Rays. That does not mean either is an easier matchup, et cetera, et cetera. I said this before. I'll say it again. I would just I don't want to face the Rays. I don't want to see them. I don't want to go to Tropicana Field. I don't want them still in the playoff mix.
Nope.
I don't really care what an easier matchup is. You want to tell me it's the Rays? You want to tell me the Rays have struggled down the stretch too? We can play the same game with them. Guardians, it's like weak lineup, incredible pitching. Oh, but Jose Ramirez. But Josh Naylor. But Oscar Gonzalez, a little scary. Same with the Rays. Wander Franco. Playoff Randy Rosarena. Who wants to see Manuel Margot in a big game? G-Man Choi against Garrett Cole. Every playoff team has 4 or 5 or 6 guys on offense who you could just make the case for that scare you. The Guardians and Rays are very similar, and one of them plays in a beautiful stadium in Cleveland, and one of them plays in a convention center, events park, go-kart track in Tampa. And we would have to be going to either of those places for game 3 and 4. And I'm going to go ahead and take the non-division rival with a tortured history without the decrepit ballpark. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I am too. And you have the mental factor there, which you don't want. There's a history between the Rays and the Yankees, and it's an all bets are off situation. It's kind of like, it's not, it's the same scenario where it doesn't matter how bad the Yankees are and how good the Red Sox are, or vice versa. Every fucking game is going to be wild and not really pleasurable. It's going to be tough. When we saw it this year, the Yankees were very good. The Red Sox were very bad. We didn't want to be in Fenway Park for 1 second. Didn't matter if you went up 2-0 in a 4-game series, you knew something bad was coming around the corner, and it did almost every time. So you want to avoid those types of narratives where you have you're susceptible potentially to getting punked. And just as recently as 2020, got punked by the Rays. Kevin Cash said what Kevin Cash said, set the tone for kind of how this Rays team is going to approach the Yankees and play them. Thankfully, the Yankees were able to handle them this year, but you don't want to face them in a win-or-go-home series because the motivation is always, always going to be there for the lesser team in said, quote, rivalry. And the Rays were going to bring it a little extra just because it's the Yankees, like how everybody else does when they face the Yankees. But not overlooking the Guardians, like I said last week and the week before, you got Shane Bieber here, 31 starts, 2.88 ERA. Tristan McKenzie, 30 starts, 2.96 ERA. Cal Quantrill, 32 starts, 3.38 ERA. And those are their top 3. Zach Plesac, pretty good. Aaron Savali, solid, nothing great, but they have enough arms to get the job done. They have enough arms to kind of spook you. Emmanuel Clase, probably best closer in the league.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And there's like 2 good closers now.
Yeah.
And it's Edwin Diaz and Clase.
Yeah. Former Yankee Trevor Stepan. Stepan. I don't know how to say his name, but 2 points.
Stepan. Not scared, but good bullpen.
Good guys. Yeah. 2.69 ERA, 66 games. Eli Morgan, 3.38 ERA in 50 games. So they have the formula here to get through a 162 game season and win division, which they did. Props to the Guardians. And now push comes to shove. The ingredients are there. If they could put up some runs to sustain themselves over 5 and 7 game series for the rest of the way. They have a good foundation. Is it talented enough to get them to the next level? I don't know. If I were, I am a betting man. I would bet they do not have enough to get past the Yankees. But then you run into a problem with the Yankees, Adam. And we were yelling about it before. This ALDS roster was released this morning, and we were blindsided by a couple of things. The positive blindside came on Sunday when Aroldis Chapman was left off the roster, deservedly so. The bad blind sides is that DJ LeMahieu is not on the roster, which we somewhat expected, but source told, I believe, Joel Sherman that he has a foot fracture that is affecting his toes. It's just affecting all of his toes. He can't get the positioning. It's been obvious. He came back. He's unable to get his footing in the batter's box, push off that back foot to use that power that he's so famously utilized in the leadoff spot to spray the ball to all fields and also hit the ball over the fence. And then you have Scott Effross. Last second Tommy John surgery here. Don't know what the hell happened there. Don't know why we're learning about that 5 minutes before the playoffs start. So I think I have a bone to pick with the Yankees, which I'll get into in a minute. But how are we feeling about this roster? What's the dealio?
I think you were more taken aback than I was by the pitcher-hitter breakdown, just because I never let myself think they were going to go with 13 over 12. But then the Dodgers roll out their roster like 2 seconds later, and somehow they end up with 13 pitchers and still a bench that just looks, wildly better than anything the Yankees have to offer. You talk yourself into the Yankees as this deep team, this vibes team, etc. Then the Dodgers roll out, like Joey Gallo's got to be the last guy on their roster, but it's Austin Barnes, Bellinger, Betts, Freeman, Gallo, Lux, Muncy, Smith, Taylor, Trace Thompson, Justin Turner, Trey Turner, Miguel Vargas. There's not a single guy, lineup or bench, who I'm like, he's a question mark, or he's a liability. Like Gallo is the only one, and I know exactly what Gallo is. He's not a question mark, and he's the last guy on the bench. The Yankees roll out a roster that includes like just people you're used to who aren't good. So you don't really get objective until you see somebody else's roster. But the Yankees have Marwin Gonzalez on there, they have Aaron Hicks on there, and they have Tim LeCastro on there as a pinch runner. That's 3 guys who provide almost nothing offensively. Marwin Gonzalez is there, I guess, because Stanton still can't play the outfield, or they don't want him to play the outfield. They said something ridiculous this weekend. Like, he's been doing outfield work, but not like defense or anything like that. Just kind of like running around with a glove. It's like, all right, well, then you're not going to play the outfield. And you've got Matt Carpenter, who's back, and I'm so glad he's back, but he's a below average outfielder before he got hurt. He's got a foot fracture. He's just there to hit. So now you're carrying 2 guys who are, bat first, but also bat only. Oswaldo Cabrera can play any position, but Andrew Benintendi's not ready. They didn't go with Oswald Peraza. They're going to need Cabrera to be their starting left fielder because Carpenter can't do it and Stanton can't do it. So that leads you to Aaron Hicks and Marwin Gonzalez to provide the versatility that Cabrera now can't, because he's just going to be stuck as your starting left fielder. Also, without LeMahieu, who was clearly injured all year, had no power, came back at the end of the year hitting ground balls. We love DJ LeMahieu. I'm sure he'll travel with the team. Not surprising he's not healthy enough to participate in this series, and I don't want him to participate in this series if he's going to be the level of non-participatory that he was at the end of the season and in August during the team's massive slide. Whatever's up with his foot, and a fracture makes more sense than just a mysterious gout issue or whatever. Yeah. Whatever's up with his toe, he can't hit. So we love him. No bearing on next season. He'll be back. They had said earlier in the year that this was going to be an off-season healing thing. They wanted to see him play through it. We saw him play through it. He was terrible. So I'm not surprised he's off the roster. But that does leave you without a backup first baseman for Anthony Rizzo. That now becomes Marwin Gonzalez or Cabrera, who's been taking some backup reps at first base because he does everything. Matt Carpenter could do it, I guess. Probably won't. Josh Donaldson, we were asking earlier in the year if he could. He's done it in the past, but he won't. Why would they do that in October after having never done it all year long? So LeCastro is really the only one that you go, that could have been Oswald Peraza, or that could have been a pitcher. But without Scott Effross and without Aroldis Chapman, who took himself out of the mix, you don't really have a 13th pitcher to use unless it's Greg Weissert, who we talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was feeling, because I know the only argument here is that, or the argument the Yankees do have here is you have Tyone, you have Clark Schmidt, and you have Herman in the bullpen. So there's multi-inning workers there, and that's going to take the stress off the later inning arms. But then you just have to think of overall effectiveness. Tim LeCastro, I like Tim LeCastro, but Oswald Peraza can pinch run. And if you're carrying Aaron Hicks, you have yourself another outfielder. So I don't know why we need another outfield, and Marwin can play the outfield. So you now carry 3 extra outfielders after already having a starting outfield. And I understand Giancarlo Stanton can't play the outfield in the early going, and I don't think he's probably going to at all. But you look at a situation where, like you just said, they're carrying all these bats, the bat-only guys, Giancarlo Stanton, Matt Carpenter, and then on the bench you have Higashioka, Hicks, and LaCastro in pinch running situations. You don't think there's going to be a lot of scenarios where Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is pinch hit for in the 8th or 9th inning, and you don't have an adequate shortstop to back him up now?
Yeah.
Unless you're going to pull some NL shit and you're going to put, Cabrera at shortstop and then, move the whole defense around.
Hicks, Marwin. Like, that's when you see these guys nobody wants to see.
Exactly. And it could have just been an easy fix where you remove, maybe you pinch hit Carpenter for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and then the next inning, Oswald Peraza goes out there and he plays shortstop. Am I crazy for thinking that? It seems like the logical solution there, because you are going to run into situations if you're carrying this many bats. Look, the reason they carried Aaron Hicks, I think, is because he can work walks. He's probably gonna pinch hit for somebody in a fairly bigger situation if it's the bottom of the lineup or if someone's not getting the job done. Maybe it's at Yankee Stadium, maybe it's not, but you're not going to carry him the whole time and not have him get any reps. At least I don't think that that's going to happen. And if he's here for the DS, unless he has a catastrophic performance and does what he did against the Rays back on September 9th, he's probably going to be here for the CS too. So this is where the Yankees stuff frustrates me. And like the Chapman thing, right?
Yeah.
Talk about him real quick. Chapman, we heard the news about him. Axed on Sunday. Goodbye. Surprising, yes. Also, not that surprising. Not that good. 4.46 ERA, 4.57 FIP, 1.45 WHIP on the year. He's done nothing to prove he deserves a roster spot.
No.
However, what did it come to? It came to literal blows. It came to Aroldis Chapman supposedly denying the mandatory workout on Friday because the Yankees couldn't give him an assurance that he would make the postseason roster. So you have to spit in the Yankees' face now to be kicked a peg down in this roster pecking order, and it's simply not fair. Because why Aroldis Chapman has done so much over the last 3 years to warrant not belonging on a playoff caliber team, or even to just hold on for the closer role as long as he did. And you have a guy like Oswald Peraza who comes in for September, kind of has debuted in a disrespectful manner, ended up getting off to a little bit of a slow start. Yankees debut, 3 hits. Yankee Stadium debut, 3 hits. What do you bat? 309 for the remainder of the way, 140 OPS plus or something.
Yeah, ended it at 139, but that'll play. That'll
delivered
work.
When he was asked to deliver in part-time. Think about how hard that is for a rookie. You're brought up in September, you have limited reps to go around, and you're mostly delivering. I mean, I don't know, outside of Oswaldo Cabrera, I don't know who did more with less. Obviously, Cabrera was playing multiple positions he never played before, and he was asked to do so much, and he delivered. So I thought Peraza deserved a spot based on his versatility as a player. He's fast. He can play defense. He can hit the ball for contact and for power. So that's where it's confusing. So once again, we're in a situation where bad performance is being rewarded, right? Aaron Hicks is here. I know he kind of figured it out a little bit in September, but still not
kind
enough.
of. Yeah, I mean his last 15 games, he hit 256 with a 360 OBP, 2 homers. Never going to give you that power. Ended up hitting 216 with a 330 OBP on the year. That's a huge gap. But again, you want that to be 240 and 360. You don't want the OBP to be 330 no matter what. He is not as bad as he looked when he ran into the left field wall and stood there as the ball rolled around Charlie Brown style. But he's also certainly not a difference maker. He's better than Marwin Gonzalez. I'd rather have him up than Marwin Gonzalez in a key moment. But better than the worst bench player who we've already sort of replaced with a versatile Oswaldo Cabrera should not really be the standard here. Having Benintendi would have been so helpful. It would have taken a guaranteed starting spot away from Cabrera. He would not be your everyday left fielder. He would probably start 2 of these games. He'd give Donaldson a blow once maybe, and he'd give he'd be in the outfield once, or they'd switch him around in the later innings, or he'd end up coming in the 6th inning and playing the back half of an extra inning game. He would have had a moment anyway, even though he wouldn't have been a starter. But losing Benintendi hurts a ton here because now you're immediately going, Hicks can't be off the roster. Marwin cannot be off the roster. And not only are they on the roster, but they're kind of your second line of defense.
Yeah. And my overall point here from from a feel perspective is that they were this close to rewarding bad performance in Aroldis Chapman. If Chapman doesn't ditch that mandatory workout, he's on the roster because Scott F. Ross needs Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
So you are in a sense rewarding bad performance all year. 1, because you need the help. 2, because you're kind of being stubborn and you're like, well, we're not going to make a monumental move unless this person absolutely makes us or forces us into that decision, which this kind of felt like.
Yeah.
And then you're leaving a guy like Peraza on the bench after he filled in pretty admirably down the stretch when the Yankees needed to, mix it up, give some players rest, shift things around after they already clinched a division and the games were meaningless. So that's where I have a problem with this. Otherwise, I like the starting lineup a lot. I love this rotation. I think Garrett Cole's got a great opportunity tonight to put that second half of the season behind him. It was a bad second half of the season, regardless of how you slice it. The Yankees went 9-8 in games he started in the second half. That's crazy for someone who's supposed to be a top 3 pitcher in the game. But now he's starting in front of Yankees fans for the first time in the Bronx ever since joining the team. Don't forget that, guys. This is the first home Yankee Stadium playoff game since 2019 ALCS against the Houston Astros.
Mm-hmm.
So Gerrit Cole is being handed the ball tonight in game 1. Aroldis Chapman is not here, so we will not be seeing him at any inning and any point. But now comes the question of how is he going to handle the pressure? What is the bullpen situation going to be? God forbid if there's something bad that happens early on. If the offense can't dig themselves out of a hole early on. I don't really want to think about that though, but nonetheless, you look at the roster. There are ways to get through it. Maybe you have J-Mo piggyback after a bad start here and there. If that happens, I don't foresee any of that happening. Once again, the Guardians offense is fairly weak. I don't think you could toss a better top 3 of the remaining playoff teams. I think the Yankees have the best top 3 with Cole, Nestor, and Severino.
Kind of insane because the Astros are going to McCullers in game 3, which he's owned us in the past, so I can't be like, that guy stinks. Like, we all know what that guy is. But Verlander, Framber Valdez, injured Lance McCullers coming off like a weird season where he barely pitched. I don't know. Versus Severino, who you could say the same thing, but we already know that he's rounding into form.
Yeah.
Like, an outsider could be like, oh, yeah, well, Sevy was hurt all year too. What are you talking about? Weird season where, Severino just came off of 7 no-hit innings into the playoffs, so he's at his peak. Although McCullers, 4-2, 2.27 and 8 starts this year. He's obviously playoff tested. Everybody knows what they're getting in him to somehow probably become underrated because he sort of didn't participate in 2019. He's out for the year. 2017 is his breakout, but he wasn't exactly a star in the second half. He only threw 118 and 2/3 innings, made the All-Star team that year, but wasn't very good for large stretches of time, and then was good in the postseason. Strange career, not a lot of durability. 76 walks, led the league last year, but he too was great this year. So I'd say the Astros and Yankees enter the postseason with pretty similar top 3s, and Severino is hotter than McCullers.
Yeah, and I think Severino's a power pitcher. I think that is a little bit more advantageous when you're talking playoffs, especially if guys have to go on short rest, or especially if there's a situation where you're in a all hands on deck scenario and you need Severino to come in for the 8th inning or the 9th inning. Like, that's on the table. I'd rather have a guy like Severino who's pumping close to 100 than Lance McCullers, who's more of an off-speed guy. And that's why we kind of talked about the advantages of maybe starting Nestor Cortez in game 1, because then you'd have Gerrit Cole, power pitcher game 2, short rest for potential game 5, or ready for ALCS game 1. But here we are. Aaron Boone's going with Gerrit Cole for game 1. I think that once again, good potential scenario for Garrett Cole to make a lot of things go away. It won't be easy. I think the pressure is still there. There are the expectations for him to deliver in game 1. I think it will not be viewed kindly if he doesn't go 7 and 1 earned or 7 and any earned with the win. Yeah. I'd go as far to say he can give up 3 as long as the Yankees, give him some run support. Remember, this is a playoff game. Playoff baseball is different. It's hard to rely on your ace to go 7 shutty. But it's all lined up. And then another great aspect of this is Aaron Judge no longer has the pressure of 62, folks. He's going into the playoffs with a clean slate. I understand that means he will not be probably working as many walks as he was down the stretch because pitchers were trying to avoid him.
Yeah, hopefully not. That was kind of boring.
Yeah, it was boring. But, I mean, I'll take if he's batting leadoff, I'll take the leadoff guy on first at any situation, regardless of how it happens. Hit by pitch, walk, single, I don't care. And that'll be this will be another thing probably worth discussing. What's this lineup going to look like? Now that we know for sure who's going to be here, and now we know for sure DJ is not going to be involved. I think does Matt Carpenter play? Is he coming off the bench? You maybe start him at DH one night and give Stanton a breather here. Like, Stanton did not finish the year off hot enough, I think, to warrant maybe starting at DH every single game. If he's not going to play the outfield, I think that devalues him. But then again, I don't think the Yankees make that decision. I'm asking questions I would make if I was put into the managerial slot today, not how a $6 billion team operates with constant image concerns. But yeah, I think you still got to go with Judge in the leadoff spot. Then you go Rizzo, Stanton, and then you kind of figure it out from there. Or maybe Glaber in the 3 because he finished September so hot. I think the lineup construction here is going to be very important. Why? 2 reasons. One is because you're facing very good starting pitching. So even though the Yankees are technically facing the Guardians number 3 starter and Cal Quantrill tonight, still a good pitcher. I know October is different. He might, poop down his leg because it's kind of different expectations, but he had a really good year and he knows how to use his arsenal. There's always value in that in a playoff series, regardless of if they're battle tested or not. And then 2 is just setting the tone for the rest of the way. If you get past the ALDS, this lineup needs to look consistent for the CS. And then if you get past that, it needs to look consistent for the World Series. Yeah. I don't think they can afford jerking people around the lineup and having people in different roles and not having people comfortable because that's so many times been the problem with the Yankees finding consistency and with guys getting in rhythms and feeling comfortable in their spots in the lineup. So I think Aaron Boone's got to figure it out tonight. It'd be great if they could just have a nice offensive evening so there is less questions in Aaron Boone's head to make any changes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what are you feeling about the lineup and how do you think we should be going about this?
I think we're going to be looking at what we were looking at down the stretch by and large. The only question that I think people are not addressing is Gleyber Torres going to be the Gleyber Torres we saw in most of September, or is he going to be weakened and thrown off by having additional rest? Even before the Yankees rested, he was sick for that Texas series. Yeah. He hasn't played in quite a while. And it was mysterious. It was not COVID symptoms. He missed an entire series. I haven't seen him in a while. So that's not saying he's going to show up and look like, August Gleyber. And that's not saying like he's going to enter, the postseason completely sapped of all power. I'm just saying that I assume he's going to be able to play all of these games, but he didn't play between October 1st and the end of the season. He went 2 for 5 in one of those last Orioles games, the one they won 8-0, did not play in the finale of that series, and then didn't play any of the 4 in Texas. So I'm being told he's fine by the fact that he's on the roster and by the fact that Oswald Peraza is not. I just don't know. Outside of that, and like I said, I assume they're just going to go pretty by the book here because they're signaling to me that he's okay. They're not going to bat him 8th or something and then be like, well, yeah, he's still under the weather. And we might start Marwin tomorrow. Like, Oswald Peraza would be here if Gleyber Torres was not supposed to be starting all of these ALDS games. But I think you're going to see, I think Judge stays lead off. I think you're going to see Rizzo behind him, Torres 3, Stanton 4, Oswaldo 5, Donaldson, IKF, Trevino, Bader, or Barry IKF last, do Bader 7th. It's really nice to have Bader here. I can't lie about that. Something that struck out as weird to me, and we can talk about the Efros injury a little bit here while we go into it, is obviously Scott Efros is suddenly not on the roster. He was number 1 in my postseason closer option power rankings that I wrote about a week ago after Ron Marinaccio went down. Efros is not going to be in this series or next season. He needs Tommy John surgery. That's a stunner any way you slice it. You're taking a potential closer away from a back end of the bullpen that's already up for grabs. But then you look at the pitchers they're carrying, and the 12 pitchers makes a big difference here, sure. But even without Marinaccio and even without Efros, there's not really a single guy here who I was like, that guy? Are you kidding me? Like, no Chapman. Miguel Castro is the name that's a bit of a wild card, but I don't read Miguel Castro and go, well, that's ridiculous. Like, Garrett, Nestor, Severino as the starters. Tyone's going to be pitching out of the bullpen. Clark Schmidt also gives you a lane. So does Domingo Germán. Then Holmes, Loaizaga, Litke, Peralta's back, Trevino, Miguel Castro. There's nobody there who just does not belong. There's nobody there like in 2019 when the Yankees carried that soft-tossing lefty whose name I've already forgotten. But do you remember when they just picked up that dude in the middle of September and then he was on the ALCS? Tyler Lyons. And he was just on the ALDS and ALCS roster. And they just had the ability to do that. That was supposedly when the bullpen was a strength. When it was like Ottavino, Britton, Chapman. And these guys are untouchable. Canely back in the day. It's like, oh my God, the bullpen is unbelievable. Before those playoff runs, did you really believe in Canely? Did you really believe in Britton? Did you really know what you had in Ottavino? I'm not sure what I have in most of these guys. I'm not sure who the closer is, but there's nobody here who I'm looking at it like, man, they really couldn't fill a full roster. They had to go with Tyler Lyons. Like, they had to make a desperate swing. Luis Sessa was on all those other playoff rosters. I don't know. The back end doesn't have that bona fide guy, which is a valid complaint until you remember that bona fide guy in recent years was Aroldis Chapman. So what are we really doing here? Was he bona fide? Did you believe in him last year?
Yeah, no, you're right. I totally agree. It's a symptom of two things, right? It's one, we don't have a choice.
Yes.
We've seen all these guys. We know who they are. We know what they're capable of, whether it's really good or whatever. But there's nobody else aside from Greg Weissert, who, I still believe should have probably taken a roster spot from Marwin, Hicks, or LeCastro.
Yeah, and I get that.
Yeah. I don't, it's just for the fact because you're facing a team that is super, super deep on pitching. Why would you not counter with that instead of countering with 3 below average offensive players? Yeah. If you had above offensive players and you're like, you know what, we're stacking the roster with the best hitters we have in the starting lineup, and then we're going to have a bench filled with boppers, and this team is not going to be able to avoid a single at-bat this entire series, that's a different story. But they didn't do that. And then I forgot my second point. Great. But anyway, that's kind of what that's what the situation is right now. We don't really have the other point was that we are looking at this and there is kind of, I don't know, I'm feeling there's feelings of uneasiness and there's feelings of like, okay, let's just do it. Because what's the uneasiness? The uneasiness is that it's an undefined bullpen. It's filled with kind of injuries. There's no real roles here. And you're missing a few of your best guys, and even the best guys here, if you look at Wandy Peralta coming off an injury, what are we going to expect in the early going? Clay Holmes hasn't really been himself for 4 months now.
And had some weird quotes this week coming back from the injury where he was like, I feel great. My bullpen session's been great. I'm peaking at like 96. Like, I hope I'll be ready for game one. Hope you'll be ready for game one. Yeah, me too. We just gave you 10 days off, and it's tonight. I hope you're ready. You're on the roster.
Yeah. Miguel Castro, 60-day IL'd in July, came back at the end of September, did a little bit of work, and that's it. So that's where you are worried. But then at the same time, you're like, we've gone into the postseason since 2017 with stacked bullpens on paper. Like you said, we had some situations where Tyler Lyons was on the roster. We had some situations where there were unknown commodities, where maybe someone was thrust into a back end role that you were kind of unsure. I was like, we sure that guy is going to be able to handle that? Yeah. Here, there's no choice. I think everybody on this pitching roster has faced the toughest of the toughest, and also mop up time. There's that weird dichotomy where it's like you look at every single person on here that's going to be in the bullpen, and there is no defined role. These guys are used to almost every single scenario. I think they all understand the stakes, and in my sick mind, I think that's kind of an advantage, because I think if you go in far too structured, any deviation from the norm is going to kind of spook people. And we've seen that happen with the Yankees before, right? They go in with this dream lineup, one injury derails the whole fucking thing. Mm-hmm. They go in with this ordered structure of, Chapman, Britton, Green, boom, boom, boom. And then you have to use Green in the fifth. And then the order of operations of the bullpen is thrown off, and then you don't know what's happening. So I think that, it has battle tested certain guys to understand the stakes and be more comfortable in situations that they otherwise wouldn't be, because they wouldn't be exposed to that if the Yankees were kind of doing their order of business as they usually do. And two, it gives Boone more flexibility. He can kind of use the human element here to judge, okay, when was the last time I brought this guy in to, get us out of a jam with runners on the corners and one out in the seventh? Probably has some data on that. He could be more comfortable trusting a guy, like, for example, Lou Trevino, who he's used in Lou Trevino's the fireman right now. You even have a guy like Clark Schmidt, who's done some 8th, 9th inning work. He's also been used in mop-up garbage duty, but he's faced high-stakes situations. You have Lucas Licky, who's used very similarly. Sometimes he's brought in the 8th inning to get out of a jam with runners on first and second. Other times he's in an 8-0 game and you want him to pitch 3 innings. Domingo Germán was giving you very good and suitable starts until he was bumped from the rotation, and then he was giving you good innings out of the bullpen. So I think that there's an advantage here, and you can't put your finger on it. You can't sit here and be like, oh, well, yeah, the Yankees are you can stack this up against, you stack this bullpen up against the Orioles bullpen, you pull up the Baseball Reference stats, put them side by side, and you're like, well, we're fucked, because that's what it looks like. But on the other side of the spectrum, I think there's a little bit of an advantage here that maybe we're not looking at closely, because don't forget, again, 2017 until last year, stacked bullpens got us absolutely nowhere. Got us the farthest we've ever gotten was Game 7 of the ALCS, and that was more of a magical run than anything. The next time we were expected to actually do something, it was 6 games in the ALCS, and Chapman, who was the anchor of that bullpen, blew the game, and that was it. So I think we have to pay more attention to kind of in all, I think this is going to be a reflection on Aaron Boone and how he can navigate kind of these uncertain waters and put guys in the right positions.
Yeah, I would be more comfortable if I knew there was a veteran who I knew could give me 2+ innings out of the bullpen. Of course, like David Robertson. He got hurt jumping up and celebrating Bryce Harper's home run. But if I had David Robertson come out and be a fireman, great. Clark Schmidt, I don't know. I've seen it all year long. He's been a fireman plenty, but I don't know what it's going to be like today. He certainly gave up a bunch of timely home runs down the stretch, blew a game to the Red Sox that the Yankees ended up winning anyway. But he's going to be asked to provide length. Domingo is going to be asked to provide length. And you're tempted to go like, I wish that was Chad Green. But Chad Green in 2017 wasn't Chad Green now. He was like a breakout rookie who was able to cover a ton of innings at a time. So if somebody wants to be 2017 Chad Green, there are plenty of people at the start of their story who have the opportunity to do that. Like Chad Green was not the wily, trusted veteran. He was the kid. We don't know if he can hack it in October. Oh, wait, he's awesome. So hopefully Clark Schmidt can do that too. Having Schmidt, having Herman, having Tyone out there is very exciting.
Yeah.
Now, would I have preferred to maybe see Tyone close one game ever before he potentially uses a closer option in October? Certainly. But the Phillies are doing it with Zach Eflin, not a closer, became a closer like a week ago. The 2019 Nationals had Patrick Corbin closing games, basically. Daniel Hudson, the 2018 Red Sox had Nathan Eovaldi go like 6 innings in the extra innings of a playoff game. And Chris Sale closed the World Series. It only makes you uncomfortable until you do it. And obviously, other teams have succeeded in areas where the Yankees have failed many, many times. The Davy Garcia, J-Hap flip-flop, like if the Rays did that, it probably works. We did it, it didn't work. But the 2018 champions and 2018 World Series champions and 2019 World Series champions both employed starters in the bullpen in mix and match innings and potentially long saves and tried out new and different formulas to get the final outs of games, of series. We're like the only ones who haven't done that. So we have to do it this year. I don't know if we're going to be champions because of it, but we don't have the late inning dedicated personnel to not do it. So let's do it. Luis Severino throw days become a thing.
Yeah.
Entering the ALCS if they make it. Because when was the most confident I've been in the bullpen in like 4 years was ironically last year's wild card game. And that team was terrible. And that offense was terrible. And it was a 1-game postseason. And I wasn't confident in any other element of that team. But Michael King was figuring out how to be a bullpen guy. Severino was in the bullpen covering multiple innings at a time. Litke was like the weakest link. And Aroldis Chapman, of course, was present. We'll talk about him shortly. But that bullpen was nasty. And they were even solid in that game. That game was dreadful and the season ended very quickly. But if we can, the only difference here really is we don't have 10 days at the end of the season to figure it all out. Herman looked pretty good last time he was out there too with a long layoff. Schmidt's been either an incredible fireman or sort of a very hittable gas can depending on the day, but he certainly had his moments this year. And Tyone, gutty, dependable, not going to get a start in this series. Probably the right call. All these off days, off day tomorrow, which makes no sense. Game 2 is on Thursday, but it's supposed to rain on Thursday, so maybe off day Thursday. Game Friday, I just don't know. But a strange schedule. You can easily go with 3 starters, so you might as well. Tyone in the bullpen makes all the sense in the world. Wish we'd seen it. Severino in the bullpen, honestly, for like a game 5 in the next round, if they can get there, if they can survive, makes a ton of sense to me too.
Yeah, I mean, the name of the game is getting outs, right? And we saw Tyone last year in game 162 pitch on that bum ankle against the Rays, and he only went, 2 or 3 innings? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I think he completed 3, but I'd like to know.
Yeah, completed. Yeah, but either way, it was an abbreviated start, and he had his stuff, and it was there, and he managed to get through it. Another thing here is
three and a third.
Oh, there you go. Okay. And another interesting thing to look at is Tyone's track record against hitters the first time through the order. So batters against him in their first plate appearances are hitting .216 with a .653 OPS. Second plate appearance, .239 with a .705 OPS. Third plate appearance, where it gets dicey, .297 with an .803 OPS. So, like most pitchers, Tyone has his way with the first few, with the first time or two through the lineup, and then as the game goes on, that's where his play starts to deteriorate. So you look at a playoff start where the stakes are higher. The game is slower. The lineups are more meticulously constructed. Pinch hitters are used more liberally when teams are trying to score runs. And Tyone's stuff might be better deployed in short inning spurts. I don't think I need to see him in a relief role. I don't think I don't think he's one of those guys to have that screw with his head. He doesn't strike me as that kind of individual with that type of ego, a Chapman-esque ego, as one could say. He was unable to pitch in save situations and outside of save situations. We've seen plenty of times before where starters move to the bullpen. They take exception to it. Clearly, that was not an issue for Tyone, at least to our knowledge. We learned he was pitching out of the bullpen, I think, yesterday or the day before, and have not heard anything. So the only issue with, and I don't know how Baseball Reference defines this. I still don't understand how they define high leverage. Mm-hmm. But in 25 games in high leverage situations, opponents are hitting 256 with an 869 OPS off Tyone. And in late and close situations, which I actually just lost. Late and close, I'm sorry. Oh, he only has 4 games of experience in there, so that doesn't even matter. So, yeah, I mean, the high leverage, again, I don't know exactly what that entails, but you'd hope that the situations aren't too crazy. You'd hope he's coming in with a 2-run cushion, asked to kind of hold the fort on that. But yeah, I like that. I do like this different approach. It's a lot of guys who can go more than 1 inning. It's a lot of guys who are mix and match. And it's a lot of guys who aren't going to be ruffled if their kind of role is, or their role isn't really existent. Like we said, none of these guys are really defined in anything, except I think Clay Holmes is the guy who's closest defined to anything. And I think he knows well as anybody that there is no closer on this team right now based on the way that he's performing. So I was scared with the bullpen coming in. Now you just you sit back and you realize, and it's like the name of the game is getting outs. If Aaron Boone can properly match up these guys in the bullpen with whoever's coming to the plate, whatever data the Yankees have, which I know they heavily use it properly for once. And I think you could have some good advantages here, and you can get out of maybe a few of these games without taxing too many arms. Use Herman for 2 innings, Clark Schmidt for 2 innings, Tyone for 2 or 3 innings. Could change the entire complexion of a series and better prepare you for what's to come in the later series when you actually, you may be faced with 7-game situations. So I'm actually, outside of being kicked down 6 pegs with knowing we're not going to have Scott Efros until 2024, and with the DJ news, the Sherman report, he has a fracture that resonates into his toes. That was what I was trying to articulate before, but I didn't have the tweet in front of me. Normal. So that's 2 things that kind of pissed me off. A, the Yankees knew Scott Efros was getting Tommy John surgery before today. So there was no reason. Once again, it's one of those things where it's like, you had this news earlier. Why do you have to drop it on ALDS day? Can't you do it over the weekend when no one gives a fuck? Everyone's watching the wild card games.
You trying to think, you think Efros is such a big advantage that the Guardians are going to build their roster around it, knowing that he's not available? Like, you're not tipping your hat.
Exactly. So it's like, why do you have to do that? Why did DJ LeMahieu play on his foot that we knew was an injury since July? Why didn't he get a 2 to 4 week IL stint in the middle of that? It's just other things. It's just things that are infuriating. But once again, taking that out of the equation, because we don't want it to overshadow what we're about to get into. We're about to have a good time in the ALDS. Got the first 2 games at home. We know where we stand in terms of the lineup, the starting rotation, the bullpen. There's really no mystery. Losing Efros was a big blow, but at the same time, there was a part of me that was questioning his ability to actually contribute because of that shoulder issue and because of the lack of reps he had coming off the IL anyway. So you're sitting there and you're like, okay, like, he's great to have in there, but is he really the reliable ninth inning guy? Is he really going to have that, is he going to have that grind attached to him after not having it for, 6 weeks? So a loss there nonetheless, and it hurts the 2023 team, but we can't even think that far. We have what we have here, feeling okay. Going to take it day by day. Hopefully we release the correct lineup tonight where we're feeling good. I wish the lineup would drop during the pod. That would be a good time.
It'd be great. All we've got is the Phillies Braves game, which is interesting. Which is a little bit of an early blowout. 6-1 at this juncture. Ranger Suarez struggling a little bit here with the. No, he's not actually. He's what? Phillies defense is bad.
3 for 3, huh? There you go.
Yeah, Nicky. Very interesting playoff action so far, but anything can happen. Before we go, I do want to give an extended shout out and goodbye, an official farewell to the biggest asshole this team has had in my lifetime, Aroldis Chapman. We'll see you, fella. Like you said, the ironic thing of all ironic things is that after the domestic violence allegations that stopped a Dodgers trade, forced the Red Sox to back away from a deal. Whatever the details were, they scared away 2 very prominent MLB teams and not the Yankees. Yankees were willing to overlook that, use him as a distressed asset, trade very low-level prospects for him, get him, flip him for Gleyber Torres, bring him back after the season ended. He signs here, pitches in 2017, is really good, but is bad in the ALCS. 2018 is really good, but has some of these trademark implosions. 2019, the implosions become more regular, and he ends our season with a walk-off home run. 2019, his contract is up. He can opt out. He can leave. Yankees say, nope, come on home. We'll extend you through 2022. 2020, shocker of all shockers, he ends the season with another home run, this time in the 8th inning, or the top of the 9th inning. Because this was a home game in San Diego. I forgot. But yeah, another season-ending dinger. 2021 did not really get a chance to contribute to a playoff run. 2022 is worst season ever. Said all the right things about being willing to not be the set closer. Clearly was not willing to not be the set closer. Got a tattoo injury midseason. Infected leg. Couldn't stand on it. Didn't tell anyone. Went to the hospital sick with a fever. Came back, rehabbed despite his awful season. Made it back for September. Down the stretch. Contributed to the team in air quotes. Walked the universe. Was dreadful. And would have made the playoff roster after Scott Effross's injury if he had not asked for assurance he was going to make the team, didn't get it, decided to go to Miami instead and skip a workout. Aroldis, this is the best karmic push the Yankees could possibly hope for. He has been, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Say what you will about the Yankees harboring him, and you can say a lot because they clearly were willing to take that chance and give him contract after contract. Can't excuse the Yankees there. And performance shouldn't even matter, but it does. But his performance at the end was also dreadful. I understand all of this. Was reviled by the fan base. Nobody liked Aroldis Chapman, except for the worst, the bottom of the boat. The barnacles on the bottom of the boat might have liked Aroldis Chapman. But there's never been a superstar with fewer memorabilia sales, paraphernalia sales, no jerseys, no shirts. Nobody cared. Came and went, was something you sat through and gritted your teeth and hoped he didn't implode in a big game. And obviously, more often than not, he succeeded. But man, were the implosions ever famous. If he had not acted like a petulant child on Friday, he would be on this roster today. Instead, they went with 12 pitchers. They did not bring Chapman back and couldn't really imagine a fonder farewell here.
Truly. And just one more point on that is, this behavior now makes the 2019 extension even more egregious because not only did he boot the Yankees from the playoffs that year on top of blowing it against the Rays in 2020 because he couldn't handle split inning duty, on top of blowing game 2 against the Astros in the ALCS in 2017. He was threatening to opt out. The Yankees didn't want him to opt out because it was a depressed reliever market and instead just gave him 2 more years or gave him 2 more years on top of the 2020 season at an insane rate that, I don't even know how many. I understand he had a great 2019 regular season, but I don't know how you justify paying a closer that much money when you're constantly looking to cut budget left and right. Even
I have never had an emotional swing like that. I was on a trip and I was refreshing my phone because I knew the deadline for opt out, for settling all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was checking, ready for an opt out. I was excited to share the tweet, and then an opt in, and he's back for a year, and it is what it is. And getting the notification that he was coming back for 3 additional seasons. Not only was he not opting out, but he was coming back through 2022, was just a wild swing. And you justify it and you say, well, I mean, when he's right, one of the league's elite closers. And then he comes in for his first outing of the year and you're like, well, he can't pitch in cold weather. And then you're like, all the biggest games are in cold weather. And then you immediately remember that this guy is just absolutely pointless and getting worse every year.
Yeah, and you give him that extent. Here's the other thing about it. If Aroldis Chapman's character issues have doomed him on Tuesday, October 11th of 2022, there is no fucking world where you're telling me that these issues have not popped up in the 6 previous seasons. The Yankees have had to have known that there was something with him, whether it was selfishness, whether it was just lack of team spirit, whether it was a lack of motivation. I don't know. But to allow him to kind of control the narrative there. Once again, after he eliminated you from the postseason, DJ LeMahieu ties that game. He eliminates you in that postseason, smiles coming off the mound, and you're just like, yeah, man, here's 2 more years at the highest possible AAV we can go for a reliever. So there you go. Is just nuts to me, especially when there were other needs. There's always needs on a baseball roster, right? There's always a ton of needs. There are so many positions. There's so many roles to be played. And to sink that much money into a guy who just wasn't – he was good as a regular season reliever, and he was nerve-wracking as a postseason reliever. And I know that there's no predicting what's going to happen in the postseason, but there was enough of a track record at that point with Aroldis Chapman where we were like, you know what? We could save 40-something million here and we can go in a different direction. They opted not to do that. Nonetheless, I think this behavior here, he was clearly unwilling to help the team. Now the team is down a pitcher heading into the ALDS because of him. Even though I'm thankful that he's not here, makes the 2019 extension more egregious. Another black mark on Brian Cashman's resume. And I don't know, how does he keep getting away with it? I don't know.
I just can't believe I'm going to go to the stadium tonight. I'm not going to see him. It's unbelievable. I never thought this day would come. And it really colors our discussion from a couple weeks ago when there were rumors that they were going to DFA him late in the season. Yeah. And it was like, why would they do that? Like they needed to clear roster spots in August. They don't really need to do that now. They had like, don't send Ron Marinaccio to AAA when you could DFA Aroldis Chapman if you just want to DFA him on October 2nd anyway. But now, clearly there must have been something going on behind the scenes long before this last, hey, if I'm not in the playoff roster, I'm out. Okay, man, we don't even know what to tell you, but don't come. Okay, great, I won't. Goodbye. Clearly things went sour earlier. Sweeney Murdy made a great point that Anthony Rizzo was giving out the championship belt. You remember this game in Baltimore where Judge homered twice.
Yeah.
Michael King threw like 3 perfect innings and Chapman almost blew the save, but he didn't. And they gave him the championship belt because they were like, my guy really needs it. Like, and you roll your eyes, but it's a team building thing or whatever. And he spat all over that. Like to abandon the team at this point in the season. It's also like the worst cast member on your favorite show abandoning the show at this point in the season. Like, I don't even like, I don't want to disperse anybody, but it's like if you hear somebody's not coming back and you're like, okay, like if the monkey asked out of Friends, and it's like, all right, I mean, yeah, you won't work for that salary. Like, I guess you can go home to Monkey Island and like, Aroldis Chapman is
lineups out.
Oh, let's go before we go.
Little quickly, we have folks: Judge, Rizzo, Glaber, Giancarlo, Cabrera, Donaldson, IKF, Trevino, Bader.
That is exactly what I said.
Nailed it.
Even when I misspoke and I was like, well, no, IKF would probably be 9 and Bader would probably be 7. Nope. Literally. Exactly.
I like it a lot.
I like it a lot. I have no complaints. There's nothing wrong with this. Win the baseball game.
Win the baseball game, please. Thank you.
And it's not a wild card round. It's not a wild card game. It's an honest to goodness series. We have, does anybody think the Braves are anybody counting the Braves out of this series down 6-1 in the fourth?
Nope.
No. If the Yankees have a tough one tonight, is anyone counting them out of the series? No. But hey, let's have a good one instead of a tough one. Could be more fun. That is it for this Tuesday edition of the Yanks Go Yard podcast. Make sure to find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Drop us those 5-star reviews, mailbag questions. Be more than happy to answer them. Be overjoyed. It would be our pleasure. And we'll hopefully be back Thursday for game 2 instead of back Thursday for game rainout. Until next time, I'm Adam Weiner. You can find me on Twitter at the address below at Adam Weiner, Thomas Carinante. Where can the people find you?
At Tommy's_takes. You can also talk to us on the official Yanks Go Yard Twitter account at Yanks Go Yard FS. We're going to be there all game, all series, all postseason. Head on over to yanksgoyard.com. Plenty of content there for you. Let's go Yanks. One last shout out here to my James Madison Dukes football program. In your AP poll, top 25.
Yeah.
We did it. After moving from D1 AA to the Sun Belt, here we are running train on the opposition. Georgia Southern next week, homecoming matchup in 2 weeks against Marshall. Pretty exciting times. So we have two things to root for. Yankees getting through October and into November, and the Dukes remaining in the top 25, hopefully getting to the college. Actually, they can't do a postseason because they just moved. They moved from conference to conference, so they're banned.
They can like play Bama in February in the Bahamas or something. Like
yeah, we got to get something on the books. Maybe they could just play the Yankees if they get eliminated from the postseason early.
Yeah, I don't want to see that, but yeah, sure, they could do that.
Yeah. Anyway, folks, game 1 tonight. What is it? 6:37.
7:37, folks.
7:37. Sorry, 7:37. It's 6:37 for the folks in Central Time for all the Guardians.
6:37 if the New York Mets had won Game 3, but I gotta tell you, they didn't.
They didn't. Sorry, Mets fans. That was brutal. But yeah, until then, we'll talk to you again on Thursday, which will be a Game 2 preview and a weird delay after Game 1. But the world's about money now, so they got to prioritize when the Yankees are playing all night slots. By the way, the full ALDS schedule came out. They are playing, I believe, at 7 p.m. or later, or 6:30 p.m. later every single game. Should it go to 5 games, and I'm sure it'll be no different for the ALCS if they were to make it there. But yep, again, hit us up at the Yanks Guard Twitter account at yanksgoyardfs, yanksgoyard.com for all your content needs. We'll talk to you again on Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Let's go Yankees.
Huge. Can't wait.